Welcome to another episode of The Voice of Viet Vegas. Today we have a special guest, Captain Sam Brown, who is running for U.S. Senate. Please welcome Captain Sam Brown. Hi, Captain.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Tell us about your military service and why you are running for the office.
Yes, sir. Like many people, my military service really started as a young boy. My father and my family has a history of serving our country in the military. And so there was a certain expectation by my parents that me and my younger siblings would serve our country. And so I can remember even as a elementary school child, just having that expectation that we would be in uniform one day. And at that time, there was Desert Storm was a short military conflict, but we really had kind of a time of peace, through the 90s, and then 9/11 happened. I was a senior in high school when our country was attacked, and I had spent my high school years preparing to go to a military academy. And so it was, just part of, I guess, my path included that right after 9/11, 1 month later, I was accepted to West Point.
Oh. Mm.
So I saw the hard work and the desire to serve come to fruition as I raised my right hand less than 1 year after our country was attacked at West Point in New York. Which is a place of incredible history. So many wonderful leaders have gone through there, people who have really shaped our country and the future and created history in the process. And to be a part of that legacy was so important to me. At that point in time now, 2002 to 2006 were the years that I was there. Our country was at war in Afghanistan. We got into war in Iraq. And so everything in my training and education was with the expectation that I would lead troops in combat one day. And there's choices we make in life that definitely have an impact on what happens. And I chose to serve in the infantry, which is where the real sort of conflict happens. Right. Part of that training, included going through airborne and ranger training and being, having the honor of being a part of that, distinct history and then leading troops in Afghanistan in 2008. And that's where that segment of my life sort of culminated as we had other U.S. troops that were under fire, and we responded to go support them. Unfortunately, a roadside bomb had been placed in anticipation of U.S. forces coming to help in the midst of this ambush. My vehicle hit this roadside bomb, and it blew up. It killed one of my soldiers. It left 4 of us with wounds that required us to be evacuated. And what I didn't know at the time, Tuan, was that I was not ever going to come back to serve in uniform in that way again. My wounds, unfortunately, took 3 years to recover. And so there I was, a young 24-year-old, American Army officer, leading troops in Afghanistan. And the next thing, I'm waking up in the ICU. And I do remember everything right after the blast too, and it was by God's grace that I'm still alive today. I cannot take any credit for having survived that. A really important part of that moment for me was we all go through suffering. It's part of the human condition. And I got to a place where I was so isolated in the pain of that moment that I gave up the will to live. And the miracle of the next moment is one of my soldiers gets to me, puts himself in harm's way, and says, "Sir, I've got you." The power of those words took me from that place of despair and gave me hope. And so when you get to, sort of ask me about why run, our country is at a place of major trauma. There's all sorts of challenges facing Americans from all walks of life. And we don't have very many people who are willing to put themselves into the battlefield, so to speak, and deliver that message to Americans. I've got you. The motto of our unit was no mission too difficult, no sacrifice too great, duty first. And I think that as Americans, we have a duty to want to take care of, to represent each other, and to do what's best for Americans. And so I've had an incredible life since then. That was in 2008 that I was wounded. I got retired from the military in 2011. I was fortunate that my wife, she worked in the burn unit ICU.
Oh.
We got married. We've got 3 wonderful children that are 10, 8, and 6. And it is, for them and my fellow Americans that I'm willing to, put my small business aside, my family responsibilities, and to do what I can to serve this country again.
Right. Going back a little bit, when you get severely burned, how long it took you to go through all of the surgery, and during that time, what were you thinking?
That was a very difficult time. All from the time that I was wounded until I got retired, which was, sort of the end of my treatment, if you will. My rehabilitation was 3 years.
Uh-huh.
Over that time, I did over 30 surgeries, thousands of hours of rehab. It's a very painful and difficult recovery process because, especially with facial burns, which I obviously have, the doctors actually want to let the scar tissue sort of mature before they operate on you in some cases. And so I had to sort of wait and let the scar tissue develop before they could go address it through surgery. And I think, one of the toughest parts of that was dealing with that sort of loss of my own personal identity.
Right.
I don't look like the person I was before.
Right.
But what I do have, and what sort of helped, encourage me through that was this something that I borrowed from the Apostle Paul, and it was written in Romans, and he says, "Rejoice in your suffering, because suffering produces endurance, and endurance character, and character develops our hope." Right. And so I thought that was a little strange, but I saw the truth in that message, and that gave me a lot of encouragement and helped me get through that.
Right. You touched a little bit about why you wanted to come back to serve the country again. So what is the real reason that you want to run for office? What motivates you?
There are many Americans who have effectively been left behind by those who represent us. Mm-hmm. And we see that in, whether it's the economic situation or the COVID situation or foreign policy, more and more we have a group of representatives who represent their interest and the interest of their parties more than the interest of their constituents. And, I served alongside great Americans, and I've worked alongside, since my military service, along great Americans. And their voice isn't heard by those who represent us. And I want to be a champion and take their voice, our issues, and our proposed solutions to DC so that we are heard.
Right. With the pandemic in the past 2 years, we are in a crisis in terms of supply, demand, and also economic crisis. What are you suggesting how we can be able to take care of those issues?
Well, it's a very complex, situation we have here, and unfortunately, I don't think that, we have time to get into a detailed plan. But here's one of the things I can tell you is our government seems to not miss an opportunity to try and interject itself into problems. And our government doesn't necessarily have a good track record of actually solving problems. Sometimes it creates bigger problems. There's a beautiful thing called the free market.
Right.
If left alone, the free market will oftentimes resolve the issues on its own. And so that's one of the things that I hope to do, is to change the conversation in DC and across our state and country, in that just because there's a challenge doesn't mean that we need politicians to go fix it.
Maybe create more law, right?
Exactly. And so, look, I think we need to change the dynamic of our representative and constituent relationship.
All right. So let's take a minute to have the commercials, and we will resume right back. Welcome back at our special editions, Meet the Candidate. Captain Sam Brown, there is right now at the moment that there is an increasingly aggressive U.S. and China relationship, and that has been a challenge for the international community. In order for us to deal with China effectively, we should have a very strong economy and also very strong army. But I think at this point we don't have those. What are you proposing?
Well, first of all, it takes our national leaders to identify that China is not only a threat to the United States, but also to many across the world. China has demonstrated an intent to spread its influence through its Belt and Road Initiative all across the world, and to essentially make other countries subordinate to the Chinese Communist Party. And there's different forms of warfare or conflict, if you will. There's armed conflict, which we're familiar with, as typical warfare. There's economic, there's cyber, there's even social, in terms of the way that, China attempts to influence our society through media and messaging. There's a lot of forms of conflict. The one form of conflict that we're not engaged in right now is the armed conflict. And there's a lot of posturing and posing around that. But we haven't had leaders who are willing to actually take China on, who does have a track record of human rights violations, of not honoring many in the international community. And if we're not willing to admit what China is, which is a threat, then we're not going to take the position of strength that we should. Our economy, absolutely right, is weak. It could be and should be stronger. Years ago, we started a relationship with China where we have now an imbalance of trade because they manufacture so much. And one of the ways we can sort of help mitigate that is by encouraging and seeing U.S. manufacturing increase, or looking for manufacturing partners outside of China and other places like Vietnam, maybe even down in South and Central America. There's other places outside of China, and yet it takes courage to make those sorts of decisions. We do have a weak economy. It's vulnerable to attack, but China does also. It doesn't help that many of the Chinese companies that are listed on U.S. stock exchanges have special rules where they are not accountable to the audit processes that U.S. companies and other international companies are subject to. And so U.S. investors and global investors on our exchanges are helping finance Chinese companies that are shell companies.
Right now, the situations between China and Taiwan, if China attacked Taiwan, what would you vote? Should we intercept or should we not?
I do think that we should attempt to intercept, but here's the challenge and the problem. This is a hypothetical. We should not even be in a position where China is ready to pounce on Taiwan. These are decisions and policies and things that our current leaders should have been taking an effect on months and years ago, so that we weren't at this position.
Right.
It's the position of the Biden administration is so weak, and they have not drawn lines where they will make a clear stand, and it invites aggression from China on Taiwan. And so I am seriously concerned that before this election, China will make military maneuvers on Taiwan and the U.S. will do nothing. And once that happens, I don't know how we go back and get China out of Taiwan. Look at what's happened in Hong Kong. Before coronavirus, there was freedom protests. There were people who were reaching out to the U.S. and to leaders and to try to make a stand. And most of those people are gone now.
Right. Um, are you advocate for pro-life? And if you do, why?
I am an advocate for pro-life, and I do not believe that any federal dollars should be going towards the termination of the unborn lives. And here's why. As someone I told you earlier, who has been at the point of death, and by God's grace I survived that, but I was waiting for death. I thought my life was over.
Right.
And in some sense it was. Look at what, even though my life was painful, even though there was suffering, look at what I have been able to participate in. Look at what I've been able to accomplish. The joys of my life were worth the pain and suffering, and so I cherish every life because of that.
Right. Free and fair elections are the foundation component of political freedoms. What does election integrity mean to you?
It's a great question, and I think a hallmark of election integrity is confidence, voter confidence, that whenever you and I cast our vote is not negated in some way because of some law or rule or anything else that may occur. And probably one of the quickest ways to have a positive impact on the integrity of our vote and our election is to make sure that there's ballot security, that we don't have situations where ballots can just be left, unsecure or unaccounted for periods of time. But most importantly, we can do this easily if our national leaders would vote for it, is national ID laws. We have to have IDs to fly on planes, to go get a drink at a bar, to do the casino. Right. It makes no sense that we cannot present an ID to vote for something that is such a sacred right for Americans.
Yeah, they still litigated some fraud going on in the past elections. Do you think by the time, next time, that we're going to vote again, do you think that those issues going to be taken care of?
Yeah, so every state, the Constitution gives state legislative bodies the authority to create, some variation in the laws. And what we have as laws here in Nevada, unless there's a special session called, those laws are going to continue to be implemented in 2022. So the only way to sort of change some of these laws that, like mail out ballots, is to win these elections with people who are committed to changing the laws and restoring, the common sense, things like voter ID, ballot integrity across the board through new laws. And it looks like we'd have to win elections with new people to be able to get that done.
Right. Immigration policy has been a flashpoint of the U.S. political debate for decades. If you are selected and you are the member of the Senate, where would you stand on this issue when it come up to decide it? How are we gonna do on the immigration policy?
Yeah, it's starting with a recognition that immigrants have helped contribute to this country being incredible, and so bad immigration policy hurts people and businesses and lives who have come here, following the rules. There's no reason that we can't do a few things. One is I think that we need to make sure that our borders are secure. There is an enormous abuse of human trafficking that hurts a lot of people. There's an incredible amount of extremely harmful drugs that much of the fentanyl that is leading to the deterioration of some of our communities and killing Americans right now is coming from China, but it's coming across the southern border. So we need to secure the border, but we also need to make sure that we are creating more streamlined, efficient processes for people who do want to immigrate here to come be a part of our American life. And we can do that by screening, doing our security screens faster, and just making sure that we are attracting and making opportunity for people who have incredible skills and can be a part of helping America continue to grow and to lead the world, that they are invited to be here. And so, whether it's, looking at some of our visa systems and reallocating, how we prioritize that, there's a lot of options, and we should be a place that honors our immigrants, that wants to continue to be a home for immigrants, and doesn't handicap people's ability to make a great American dream and life for themselves.
Well, thank you so much, Captain. I think there is a lot of other issue that I wanted you to address. However, that we have a limited time today, but I will invite you back at some other time. But before we finishing it up, would you take a couple of minutes and tell the audience why they should vote for you, or why they should join your campaign and help you get elected?
If you are ready for a new type of leader who will actually listen to and do my best to represent you, not party leadership, but represent you, then I would love to have your support, to have your vote. My website is listed. It's captainsamBrown.com. You can get in touch with my campaign. There's so much to be done. This is a grassroots campaign. This is not a campaign funded by those out of DC. This is a campaign that is run by people locally here in Nevada, and I'm so proud of our team. We knock on doors, we make phone calls, we work. We do not take anything for granted, and this is a well-funded campaign too. But by you, the people who can contribute $50, maybe only $20. This isn't funded by thousands and thousands of dollars out of people from DC and special interest groups. So if that's the type of campaign and the type of candidate that you want to believe in, go to our website, captainsambrown.com, join our team. Let's work together in the primary in June and then in the general election in November, and we will win this for us.
Thank you so much, Captain Sam Brown. I believe that with a person like yourself, with the heart of servicing this country, not because of any other personal issue, but with your hearts. And I wish you the best for this primary, and also I look forward to having you back again at some other time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.